The kid across the street lifted his hand at me one afternoon and just held it there, and that was the closest thing to a hello I got from that whole family the entire summer. I was 17. My mom shipped me down to my grandma's place in July of 2021 because she'd had a hip replacement in the spring and needed somebody around to carry groceries and run the mower. Grandma lived in a town in Mississippi you've never heard of. One gas station, one Sonic, a Piggly Wiggly out by the county road. The kind of place where the same 3 trucks drive past your porch every day and the drivers all lift 2 fingers off the wheel when they pass. Everybody waves. It's not a friendly thing exactly. It's more like a habit you'd feel rude breaking. Which is why the house across the street bothered me pretty much right away. It was a big, white 2-story with a wraparound porch and green shutters, the kind of house that in a movie would belong to a doctor. Grandma's place was a low brick ranch, and from her front room, you could see straight across their lawn and up to their porch swing. That swing never moved. There were toys in the yard sometimes, a plastic tricycle, one of those cheap Walmart soccer balls, but the way they sat there, they always looked like they'd been placed instead of dropped. The first week, I didn't see anybody at all. I asked Grandma who lived there, and she said, "Oh, them, they keep to themselves." And that was it. She went back to snapping green beans over a colander in her lap. I saw the dad first. Tall guy, real thin, maybe 50. He came out one morning in gray slacks and a button-up and got into a black Silverado and drove off. He didn't look at Grandma's house. He didn't look at anything. He walked to the truck like somebody was timing him. The mom I only saw through the kitchen window when I was taking out the trash. She was doing dishes, I guess. Her head didn't move the whole time I was at the cans. Then one Saturday, I saw the kids. There were 3 of them. A girl who looked maybe 10, and 2 boys, one around 7, one a little younger. They came out the side door in a single line and walked to the middle of the yard and started playing. That's the word I want to use, playing, but it's not right. The 2 boys pushed the tricycle back and forth between them. The girl bounced the soccer ball. That was the whole game. Push, catch, and here's the part I couldn't get past. They were completely silent. No laughing, no arguing, not even the little breathing noises kids make when they're concentrating. I stood on Grandma's porch drinking a warm Sprite and watched them for a good 10 minutes, and I never heard one sound out of any of them. At some point, the girl looked up and saw me. She didn't react. She just went back to the ball. I asked Grandma about it that night at supper. I said something like, "Those kids across the street are kind of weird, huh?" She was pouring iced tea, and she set the pitcher down slower than she needed to. "Their daddy's strict," she said. "That's all. They don't talk. They talk inside, I'm sure." She wouldn't look at me while she said it, which for Grandma meant she was done with the topic. I let it go. The next couple weeks I kept an eye out without really meaning to. You get bored in a town like that, you watch what there is to watch. I noticed the kids came out most afternoons between about 4 and 5:30, always in that same order. Girl first, then the older boy, then the little one. They never went past the edge of their own grass. If the soccer ball rolled toward the road, the girl would walk after it and pick it up and walk back. She never ran. None of them ran. One evening, the little one fell off the tricycle and scraped his knee bad enough that I could see the blood from Grandma's porch. He didn't cry. He sat there for maybe 3 seconds with his mouth in a line and then got up and pushed the trike back to the older brother, and they kept going. The older brother looked at the knee for a second and then looked away. That was the thing that started to actually get to me. I'd grown up around kids. I've got 2 younger cousins who wailed like a fire alarm anytime they stubbed a toe. Whatever was going on over there, it wasn't shyness. It was something they'd learned. Around the middle of July, it got so hot, the pavement smelled like tar all day. Grandma had her window unit rattling in the front room, and she let me set up a little fan by the couch where I slept. I remember the light in that room in the late afternoon, this thick yellow that made everything look older than it was. Cicadas outside so loud you could feel them in your teeth. I was standing at the front window that day, I don't even remember why, waiting for a delivery maybe. The kids were out. The oldest boy, the one who was around 7, had stopped pushing the tricycle and was just standing at the edge of their yard, looking at Grandma's house. Looking at me, I figured he was staring at his own reflection in the window at first. Then I moved a step to the side, and his eyes moved with me. He was a little kid, blonde hair cut short, blue t-shirt, shorts that were too big on him. I want to be clear that he didn't look scary. He looked like a normal boy. That's what made it worse, I think, because a normal boy shouldn't be able to stand that still for that long. I counted because I didn't know what else to do. I got to about 45 seconds and I was starting to feel stupid, like I was in a staring contest with a child through a pane of glass. I lifted my hand to wave at him, just to break it, just to be a normal person doing a normal thing on a normal street. He lifted his hand back. Not a wave. He didn't move it side to side. He just raised his arm up until his palm was level with his shoulder, fingers spread, and held it there, like he was being sworn in for something. His face didn't change. His mouth stayed shut. I lowered my hand. He kept his up. Maybe 5 seconds. Maybe 10. It felt longer than that. Then he lowered his arm, turned around, walked to the side door of the house, and went inside. The girl and the little one followed him a minute later without looking back. I told Grandma about it that night. I tried to make it sound funny, like, "Grandma, I think I got hexed by an 8-year-old today." She was doing a crossword in her recliner, and she looked up at me over her reading glasses. She sighed. Not annoyed. Tired. She set the crossword down on the arm of the chair. "Baby," she said, "that family's been like that since before you were born. The daddy's real strict, real religious, some kind of religious. I don't ask. Those kids aren't allowed to talk to anybody on the street. It's a rule in that house. That can't be legal. Social service has been out there I don't know how many times over the years. The house is clean, kids go to a school somewhere, they're fed, they got clothes. There's nothing to write down on a form." She picked her pencil back up. "The boy was probably just being friendly the only way he's allowed. Don't make more of it than it is." I sat with that for a while. I kept thinking about the way he'd held his hand up, not because it was creepy, though it was, a little, because I couldn't stop wondering if that was the whole conversation, if that was the whole thing he was allowed to say to me, and he'd used it. A couple days later, I did something I still don't know how to feel about. I tore a page out of the back of one of Grandma's grocery notebooks, and I wrote, "Hey," on it in blue pen. Nothing else, no name, no number. Just "Hey," lowercase, in the middle of the page. I folded it twice, and I waited until it was almost dark, until the porch lights on our side of the street were coming on one by one, and I walked across the road. The asphalt was still warm through my sneakers. I stood at the edge of their yard by the mailbox for probably 10 seconds before I did anything, just listening. The house was quiet. All the lights were on downstairs, and every curtain was closed. I tossed the note over their little chain-link side fence into the grass by the porch steps, and I walked back across the road at a normal speed, and I did not look at the windows. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about the dad finding it, whether he'd know it was me, and how he'd know, whether he'd come across the street in the morning to say something to Grandma. Nobody came. The next morning, Grandma opened the front door to sweep off the mat, and something fluttered off the step. A piece of paper, folded twice, the same way I'd folded mine. She picked it up and looked at it and handed it to me without saying anything. Inside, in pencil, in the wobbly print of a kid who was still learning to write neatly, one word: "Thank you." That was all it said. I stood in the doorway holding it for a while. Grandma went back inside. I could hear her filling the coffee pot in the kitchen. Across the street, the black Silverado was already gone. The curtains were closed. The tricycle was on the grass where they'd left it the day before. I never saw any of those kids look at me again for the rest of the summer. Not once. They came out at 4, they played their quiet game, they went back inside at 5:30. The girl walked after the ball, the little one didn't cry when he fell. I flew home in August. I've still got the note. It's in a shoebox in my closet with a couple of movie stubs and my old learner's permit. I couldn't tell you why I kept it. It just seemed like the kind of thing you don't throw away. The family called me on a Tuesday, mother, father, both on speakerphone from a kitchen I could almost picture from the sound alone. Small room, tile floor, a refrigerator humming behind them. Their son Marcus had been missing since February. It was now the middle of May. I work out of Memphis, missing persons mostly, runaways, adult children who cut contact, the occasional insurance case. I'm not a hero. I'm a guy who knocks on doors and writes down what people say. They wanted me to come down to a town I'll call Delford, because I still don't want to write the real name anywhere anyone can search. 2 hours south of Memphis, off a state highway, past a lot of pine and a lot of nothing, under 3,000 people, 1 traffic light on Main, a Piggly Wiggly, a Dollar General, 2 churches on the same block. Marcus was 22, worked at a lumber yard, lived with his parents in a single-wide off-county road 12. On February 9th, his mother made him breakfast. On February 10th, he was gone. Truck gone. Phone off. Nothing on his bank card since. The sheriff's department opened a case and closed it inside a week. The write-up said Marcus had voluntarily departed. No signs of foul play. No note, but also no blood, no forced entry, no ping on the phone. His parents got a form letter and a call from a deputy who said, and I'm quoting the mother here, "Boys his age get restless." I drove down on a Thursday, got in around 2 in the afternoon. The heat that time of year in Mississippi is already thick. Everything smelled like cut grass and diesel. I met the parents at their house. The father sat on the porch and rolled a cigarette with hands that knew how to do it in the dark. The mother showed me Marcus's room, bed made, 2 Xbox controllers on the dresser, a stack of pay stubs in a drawer, work boots by the door, the good pair, the ones you wouldn't leave if you were leaving. She pointed at them without saying anything. "He didn't take his boots," she said. "He wouldn't." I asked to see the sheriff's report. She had a copy, half a page. The deputy who signed it had spelled Marcus's name 2 different ways. That afternoon, I started with neighbors. In a town that size, you don't need appointments. You just walk up. Most people opened the door, a few didn't. One woman, older, wiry, watering tomato plants in a plastic tub, looked at me for a long second when I said Marcus's name. "You're the second one," she said. "Second what?" "Second man come down asking. First one was up here around Christmas. Different family. Boy named Trey." I wrote that down. Trey had been 19, worked landscaping, left in October of the year before. Same story. Truck gone, phone off. Sheriff said he'd taken off on his own. His grandmother had hired someone out of Jackson to look, and that someone had come, asked around for 2 days, and gone home. She thought his name was Ron or Roy. She never heard from him again after he left town. Her words, not mine. By the end of that first day, I had 2 more. A kid called Jamie, who worked nights at the gas station on 45, gone in the summer of 2017, and a boy the neighbors kept calling JD, real name I never got straight, who left in the spring of 2018. Both under 25, both from families with no money and no lawyer on retainer. Both officially voluntarily departed. I got a motel room at a place off the highway, the kind with a hand-painted sign and a Coke machine outside that only took quarters. $68 a night cash. The door didn't sit right in the frame. I ate a gas station sandwich and made notes on a legal pad because I don't trust my phone in strange towns. The next day I kept walking. I talked to a woman who cut hair out of her kitchen. I talked to a man who ran a used tire shop and pretended he didn't hear my question twice before he answered it. I talked to a preacher who invited me in for sweet tea, and then, when I mentioned the sheriff, put the tea down and said he had a call to make. I let myself out. By Friday night, I had 7 names. 7 young men, over 3 years, all from families that fit the same profile. No trust funds, no connections, mothers who worked at the plant, fathers who did roofing or hauled scrap. In every single case, the file said the same thing: voluntary departure, case closed within 10 days. I want to be careful here. I don't know what happened to those 7 men. I still don't. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I solved it, because I didn't. I want that on the record. What I'll tell you is what I felt, walking around that town with a list in my back pocket. I felt like I was the only person in the whole county who thought a list of 7 names meant anything. Everybody else already knew. That was the part that got under my skin. Not that people were scared, that people had accepted it. Saturday morning, I went to see the sheriff. The building was small, cinder block, painted beige, 1 flag out front. I asked at the front desk to speak with him and gave my real name and my license number. A deputy took me back without a word. The sheriff was maybe 60, big man, not fat, big, 4 arms like a bricklayer, gray hair cut short. He shook my hand, and it was the handshake of a person who had done it 10,000 times and had not enjoyed any of them. He offered me a seat. I sat. There was a picture of his wife and 2 grown daughters on a shelf behind him. A softball trophy from 2003. The office smelled like coffee and gun oil. I told him who hired me. I told him I'd been looking into Marcus's case. I said I understood his department had already investigated, and I wasn't trying to step on toes, but I had some questions. He nodded, slow, patient. He said, "Ask." I put the list on his desk. 7 names, dates. I'd written it out clean the night before, because I wanted him to see it all at once. He looked at it for a while. He didn't pick it up. He didn't touch it. He read it upside down like a man reading a receipt to make sure he wasn't cheated. Then he leaned back in his chair. "Son," he said, "where you from?" "Memphis." "You got family?" "No." "You staying in town tonight?" I didn't answer right away. He watched me not answer. "That's how it is here," he said. "Boys leave. They get in trouble. They got debts. They got a girl somewhere. They go. That's not a case. That's a life." I said something about patterns, about the paperwork being thin, about the families deserving a real look. He let me finish. Then he tapped the list with 1 finger and slid it back across the desk toward me. Didn't hand it. Slid it. "Take your list," he said. "Go home while it's still light." He said it the way you'd tell a kid to get out of the road. Not loud, not angry, just a fact about the weather. I stood up, said thank you for his time, because I always say that. He didn't answer. I walked out of the building, and I did not go back to the motel. Did not go back for my toothbrush, or the little bag of dirty shirts I'd left on the bed. I got in my car, and I drove to the parents' house, and I told them, in plain language, that I could not help them, and that I was leaving today, and that they should not tell anyone I had said anything to them beyond that. The mother started to cry. The father put his hand on her shoulder and looked at me and nodded once, like a man agreeing to a deal he already understood. I drove north with the windows up and the AC on, and I did not stop for 2 hours. I kept checking the rear view. Nobody was there. That almost made it worse. Back in Memphis, I made copies of everything. The list, the names of neighbors who'd talked, dates, addresses, the 2 versions of the sheriff's report with Marcus's name spelled 2 ways. I put it all in a manila envelope, and I mailed 1 copy to a reporter at a paper that does long investigative pieces out of Atlanta. I sent another anonymous to the State Department of Justice's public integrity address. I paid cash for the envelopes. I wore a hat into the post office. I know how that sounds. I did it anyway. 3 months later, in August, the article ran. It was long. It named the department, not the sheriff by name, not at first. It talked about a pattern of closed cases and unreturned calls and families who had been told, quietly, to stop asking. It mentioned 7 young men. Federal review of the department was announced within a couple of weeks. That part made the wire. 6 months after I left that town, Marcus turned up alive in Missouri. He'd been staying with a cousin. He had left on his own, over money he owed to people who had nothing to do with the sheriff or the department or any of it. When his mother called to tell me, she was laughing and crying at the same time, and she said thank you about 15 times. I didn't correct her. I didn't tell her I hadn't found her son. I hadn't. He found his own way home. Here's the part I keep coming back to. Marcus was fine. Marcus, of the 7, was the one who was fine. That's 1 out of 7. I don't know about the other 6. I don't know if the review found them. I don't know if anyone ever will. I don't take work in Mississippi anymore. Not that county. Not any county. When a call comes in from down there, I say I'm booked. I've been booked since May of 2019. It was around 11:30 when I decided to cut through Humboldt Park. Bad idea in hindsight, but I'd done it 100 times, coming home from my buddy Raphael's place on Kedzie, and the sidewalk route around the park adds 15 minutes. When it's 5 below with the wind, 15 minutes matters. This was December 2021, a Tuesday, I think, 2nd or 3rd week of the month. Chicago had gotten one of those cold snaps that make your teeth hurt. The forecast that morning had said -15 with the wind chill, and by night it felt about right. The kind of cold where the air tastes like metal, and your eyelashes stick together if you blink slow. I'd been at Raphael's watching the Bulls lose. A couple beers, some greasy takeout, nothing about the night that should have made it stick in my head. The park was empty, which is what you'd expect. Humboldt Park at midnight in a normal week has a few people around, dog walkers, kids passing through, sometimes guys drinking on the benches near the boathouse. That night, nothing. Snow crunched under my boots, and that was the only sound for a long stretch. Even the traffic on Division was muffled, like the cold had put a lid on the city. The lampposts along the path were on, but they were the old kind, orangey and dim, and they made the snow look yellow in patches and blue-gray everywhere else. The boathouse across the lagoon was dark. I could see one apartment window lit up on Sacramento, way in the distance. That was it for signs of life. I was cutting east across the field toward the lagoon. There's a footpath that runs along the water and comes out near Sacramento. I had my hood up, my hands shoved deep in my jacket pockets, and I was walking fast because I could feel the cold working into my jeans. Then I saw her. She was standing at the edge of the lagoon, on the little concrete lip where the grass meets the ice, facing the water, just standing there. At first I thought she was a statue. There's a couple of statues in Humboldt Park, and my brain jumped there before it jumped anywhere else. But the coat was too puffy, too red, and there was steam coming off her, faint, the way breath looks in that kind of cold when it's not moving much. I slowed down. I don't know why. I think anyone would. She wasn't dressed for standing outside. She had the coat, but no hat, and her hair was down, dark, past her shoulders. She had gloves on, but no scarf, in -15. Nobody stands outside in Chicago in -15 without a scarf unless something's wrong. And the way she was standing, she wasn't leaning toward the ice like someone about to step out on it. She was planted there, like she'd been dropped in place and told to wait. I stopped about 30 feet away. The path curved close to where she was. I couldn't just walk past like I hadn't seen her. "Ma'am," I said. My voice came out flat and small. The cold does that. She didn't move. I tried again. "You okay? It's cold out here." Nothing. Not a turn of the head. Not a flinch. I stood there for a couple seconds, running through the options. You don't grab a stranger, especially a woman, in the middle of the night in a park. And sometimes people are on something, or having an episode, and the wrong tone makes it worse. But it was 5 below. She was going to lose fingers if she stood there much longer. I came closer, slow, made my boots crunch loud on purpose so she'd hear me coming. "Hey," I said softer. I'm just gonna check on you, alright? I'm not gonna touch you. She still didn't turn. But now that I was closer, maybe 10 feet, I could see she was breathing. Small clouds, steady, not the frantic breathing of someone about to do something, just breathing. Her eyes were open, fixed on the ice. The lagoon was frozen solid. It had been frozen for days at that point, that white-gray look ice gets when the temperature never gets above freezing. There were footprints on it toward the middle, from kids probably, and a beer can on its side maybe 20 feet out. No hole, no sign anything had happened. I looked at her face. She was older than me, maybe in her 50s. No makeup. Her cheeks were red from the cold, and her eyes were wet, but not crying, not sobbing, just wet the way eyes get when the wind hits them. She wasn't looking at anything in particular, or she was looking at something I couldn't see. I said, "You want to sit down? There's a bench right there." She didn't answer. I thought about calling 911. I had my phone in my pocket and I actually took it out and unlocked it, but my thumb hovered over the number and I stopped. Because what was I gonna say? There's a woman standing next to a pond. She's fine. She just won't talk. They'd come, and if she wouldn't talk to them either, they'd put her in the back of a squad car and take her somewhere, and I didn't know if that was the right thing for her. So I put my phone away, and I did the thing I still don't totally understand. I stepped up next to her, not right next to her, but on the same concrete lip, maybe 4 feet to her right. Close enough that she'd know I was there, and I looked at the ice too. I didn't say anything else. I figured I'd give it a minute. If she wanted me to go, she'd say so. If she didn't, at least somebody was next to her. A minute went by, then 2, then I stopped counting. The cold was serious. I remember my thighs starting to go numb through the denim, and the wet part of my nose freezing every time I breathed in. I flexed my fingers inside my pockets to keep them going. There was a moment where the wind came up off the ice and hit us straight on, and I almost said something about it, about how cold it was, but I didn't. It felt disrespectful. Like complaining about the weather at a funeral. A plane passed low over the park, coming in toward O'Hare, its red light blinking slow. I watched it until it was gone. She never looked up. I thought about my dad. He died a few years earlier, not violent, just cancer, and I remembered standing at the funeral home, not able to make my face do anything. People kept coming up to me, and I couldn't figure out what expression I was supposed to have. That was the closest thing I had to whatever this woman was doing. At some point, and I couldn't tell you how long we'd been standing there, she said something. I almost missed it because her voice was so quiet. "He drowned here." I didn't turn my head. Something told me not to make it a big moment. 3 years ago, she said. I let a couple of seconds go by. Then I said, "I'm sorry." She nodded, just once, barely. "My son," she said. "He was 9. I don't remember what I said back. Something small. Maybe just, yeah. I remember thinking that anything I said was going to be wrong, and the least wrong thing was to say almost nothing. She kept talking, in that same quiet voice, in little pieces with long pauses in between. She said she came every year on the date. She said her husband didn't come with her anymore. She said the ice looked exactly the same as it did that day, which was what she couldn't get over, that it just kept looking the same, every winter, like the water didn't remember. She said his name once, quietly, and I didn't catch it, and I didn't ask her to repeat it. I stood there and listened. I don't know if she was talking to me or just talking out loud because I was there. I don't think it mattered to her which one. We stood like that for maybe 20 more minutes. I stopped feeling my toes about halfway through. She never cried exactly, but every so often, she'd wipe her face with the back of her glove. Eventually she said, "I should go. You want me to call you a car?" She nodded. I got an Uber on my phone, and we walked out of the park together, slow, back toward Sacramento. She didn't say anything else on the walk. I didn't either. There was a stretch where our footsteps went in sync for maybe 10 paces, and then they went back to being out of sync. And I remember noticing that. When the car pulled up, she got in. She looked at me through the glass and mouthed, "Thank you." Then the car pulled away. I never got her name. She never got mine. I don't know what her son was called, or where she lived, or if she made it home okay that night. I assume she did. I finished walking home, made a coffee I didn't drink, sat on my couch with my coat still on until I stopped shivering. Called my sister the next morning for no real reason, and when she asked what was up, I said nothing was up, and we talked for 20 minutes about her kids. I think about her more than makes sense. It's been 2 years. Every December, when it gets cold enough that the lagoons freeze, I think about her standing there in that red coat with her hair down, and I think about the 9-year-old, whose name I don't know, who went out on the ice one afternoon and didn't come back. I don't have a point to make about it. I just think about them.